The notorious Conor McGregor is in the news once again. He just cannot be problematic, can he? In today's video, we'll be talking about how the USADA has suggested that the Irishman is not eligible for the 6-month testing exemption he so wants. And we'll also talk about how he's responded to Anthony Smith's criticism. So folks, make sure to stay till the end of the video to learn all about it. First up, USADA suggests that McGregor isn't exempt. So here's the thing, Conor is hoping to walk back into the octagon after just 2 drug tests. However, USADA may just rain on his parade and make him wait for a whole 6 months. Now the question that's in most of our heads is whether he'll even be able to return to UFC action without spending 6 months in the United States Anti-Doping Agency testing pool. It's quite a hot question, because most of us ended up realizing that the Notorious hasn't been getting drug tested since July 2021. It's been well over a year, Conor. Get tested. According to a statement that was given by the USADA's Director of Communications, the agency doesn't at all believe that McGregor fits the conditions for the Exceptional Circumstances clause. The director stated that McGregor isn't currently enrolled in their testing pool and that he would absolutely have to be enrolled for 6 months unless an exception is granted. However, he then also stated that there's no way he's applicable for that exception. This is the exact opposite of what Conor has been saying for the past few days. He's stating that he's clear for the testing that'll come in February. He also claims that he will complete his 2 tests as per the USADA requirements and that he's booking a white. He further goes on to tell us that he feels that everything was fully disclosed before he began, and that the state of allowance for athletes to recover from horrific injuries, like the one he had in 2021, must be assessed all over again. Next up is the exception clause in question. The section of the USADA policy that's being talked about so much is 5.7.3. According to that clause, an athlete who gives a notice of retirement to UFC or has ceased to have a contractual relationship with the sport due to inactivity may not resume competing in UFC bouts until they've given the UFC a written notice stating their intent to resume. And then, because of that, they also have to make themselves available for testing for 6 months prior to returning to the competition. Now folks, if there's one thing we've learned, things aren't ever as easy as they seem. The rule has an exemption that McGregor's hoping to exploit. So the UFC may grant an exemption to the 6-month written notice rule in exceptional circumstances. They'd do so if there are exceptional circumstances where the strict application of this rule would be unfair to the athlete. In this case, the athlete in question, which is McGregor for now, will need to provide a minimum of 2 negative tests before returning to the competition. Up next, will he get an exemption then? Now here's where it gets really interesting. The USADA seems to give UFC the final discretion on who will get granted an exemption. And then here's another thing. There doesn't seem to be a further explanation of what qualifies as an exceptional circumstance or what would be considered unfair to the athlete. The entire purpose of this clause seems to leave a loophole open for UFC to use at its own discretion. The question is, why would the USADA even do that? So now the USADA has stated that they don't believe McGregor is eligible for an exemption. Okay, now what? Because it doesn't really seem like it's their call to make anyway. This is something that's left entirely to UFC, and Conor may, in fact, without deserving it, get an exemption. Conor McGregor responds to Anthony Smith's USADA criticism. Now that that's out of the way, let's talk about how Conor has responded to Anthony Smith's USADA criticism. First and foremost, Conor defends his withdrawal. Conor McGregor, the former 2-division champion, has defended his withdrawal from the USADA's testing pool in a fiery tweet to Anthony Smith. McGregor took to Twitter and wrote, "The audacity of this loser. Anthony Smith, you're a loser. Do you think I give a about anything else? I am the most tested fighter of all time in combat sports. I give everything to this game. You, nothing." Wow, Conor, alright, those are some pretty harsh words. But the question is, what got the Irishman so worked up anyway? Well, Smith criticized his ability to bounce in and out of the drug testing program while recovering from a broken leg. In other words, he insinuated that the ex-champ used banned performance enhancers to speed up his recovery. Well, on the Believe You Me podcast, Smith stated that there's only one reason why you would resist testing like that. He also stated that Conor's looking jacked. He further said that we keep seeing videos of McGregor flexing in front of mirrors and screaming, and he looks extremely large when doing so. Smith also pointed out that he healed really fast, like really fast, and that's not possible. Following up, what does Smith know about healing? Just like McGregor, Smith too is recovering from a severe leg injury that he suffered in his most recent fight. The light heavyweight suffered a broken ankle in the first round of his UFC 277 meeting. He was fighting Magomed Ankalaev when he ended up breaking his leg. Smith states that his and everyone else's experience with broken limbs in the octagon just doesn't match up with that of the Irish star. He also stated that Chris Weidman still hadn't recovered from his broken leg at UFC 261. Smith also claimed that he talked to Weidman and he's still struggling from his injury. He also brought up that Anderson Silva took a really long time to get back as well. So did Corey Hill. Basically, anyone who's broken their leg has taken a long time. Yet Conor, on the other hand, is pretty much all healed up. And of course, it bugs him that he can just jump out of the pool, juice up on whatever he's juicing up on, and then jump back in the pool. And after all of this, no one's going to say about it, according to Anthony. At the end of his rant, Anthony stated that it's weird. It bothers me. What's more, McGregor did not appreciate Anthony's words. As expected, the Irishman didn't take kindly to the insinuation that he'd cheated the system, even though he most likely did. And then, of course, he lashed out at Smith with a flurry of tweets, as expected. In a tweet later, he admitted that he'd involved the USADA in his treatment program. He stated that everything was fully disclosed before he began. He didn't specify what was disclosed, even the exact role that was played by the USADA in the entire recovery process. Earlier in October, the USADA confirmed to MMA Fighting a 6-month drug testing regimen that McGregor absolutely had to undergo before being readmitted to the sport. This did happen at a dubious time, considering that it emerged after the agency's testing history revealed that he hadn't been tested all year. Because of its own policy, the officials of the agency can't comment on any specific athlete's participation in the UFC's anti-doping program. Neither can they comment on any specific athlete's removal from the pool. Funnily enough, McGregor's 11 USADA tests in 2021 made him one of the most tested athletes on the roster. Then, of course, he got injured and the testing dropped off. On the other hand, we're soon getting a Netflix documentary that would detail his recovery from the injury, so we would finally know how he ended up recovering so darn fast. He's expected to return to the octagon next year to prove his worth all over again. Meanwhile, Smith is expected to fight Jamal Hill at a March UFC event. This will be his first fight in 8 months following his serious injury. Finishing up, doesn't seem like he's going to be back early. Leon Edwards, an MMA fighter, spoke about Conor's possible comeback in February on The Breakfast Club. He stated that he really wants to see the Irishman succeed, but he's skeptical regarding his ability to compete with the top 5 competitors. See, here's another problem. Conor's gained a lot of muscle. This might usually be good in sports, but in combat sports, it might end up being a problem. But wait, what Edwards didn't do was the question of how he ended up with all that muscle so quickly. Can we have some of that magic juice, Conor? Now, McGregor has stated that he would prefer the welterweight division because of his weight gain during his time away from the ring. And if it ends up happening, and if Edwards defends the championship, then maybe the two can fight as well. But it's likely not going to be that way for now. If Conor is tested, as many folks are advocating for him to do, then he might not return as early as he'd like to. Anyway, that's a wrap for today's video. Do you folks think Conor will be added to the pool? Let us know in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and make sure you're subscribed. Having said that, see you in the next one.